Welcome, everybody, to this week's Fireside Chat. I'll be your host, Marlon Ruiz. Today's special guest is Evan Shapiro, currently serving as CEO for the Mina Foundation. Before we get started, let's cover a little bit about Evan's background. In the before time, Evan was CEO of O1 Labs. He was co-founder of the Mina protocol. He did his research MS in personal robotics. He was a software engineer at Mozilla, and he earned his BS in computer science at Carnegie Mellon. Welcome to Evan. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Yeah, glad to be on.
Cool. So when we start our chats, we usually like to talk a little bit about the background of our guests. So if we could dive into that a little bit and just give us your personal journey, your aha moment, like how did you get into this space, and talk a little bit about that for us. Thanks.
Yeah, as you mentioned, like I did a lot of computer science programming. That was like both what I was doing academically and my main hobby by far for like a very long time. I had found myself very interested in computers, both from like a programming aspect, like super technical, but also from like a social aspect, thinking about how do these systems actually interact with people and societies and trust and systems? And that led me down doing both stuff in robotics that I got very interested in, but also cryptocurrency. I just been spending a lot of time on the internet. I learned about crypto, Bitcoin pretty early on, when pre-Ethereum, when it was the proliferation of random altcoins, and followed it pretty closely until around 2017, when both kind of seeing the challenges Bitcoin was facing around operating at scale, and the Bitcoin block wars that were going on around how do we trade off the scale of the chain and the decentralization of it, really got me kind of pulled in a deeper way. It became really interesting to think about, okay, like crypto has like this vision, at least in my mind, of being this kind of like underlying social, like trustworthy, like fabric for computation, like pretty broad, but something like that. But you know, we can't even scale beyond like a few transactions per second without losing decentralization or trading off scale in weird ways. And that got me really interested to learn and be thinking about, are there ways to improve this? And that eventually resulted in me and my co-founder exploring zero knowledge proofs for verifying large amounts of transactions at scale, which eventually became Mina.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so you kind of touched on the creation of Mina there. I would like to expose the ZK story a little bit more, because we have folks that are maybe newer to the industry, who aren't up to speed on the latest, even though ZK is not necessarily a new topic. Can you just give us like maybe the TLDR primer for that, just for our audience?
Yeah. So they're a cryptographic primitive. It's like, you know, same class as like a hash function or a public key, that kind of thing. But they're much more powerful because they're general purpose. Basically, what they let me do is we can have a program that we both know about, and I can tell you, hey, if you ran that program with this input, you're going to get this output, and you can trust the proof I give you of that without having to run the program yourself. And what's really cool is in doing that, you can both hide pieces of information about what inputs you're giving to the program. For example, you could say, something has been signed by this entity we both trust, but I'm not going to tell you exactly what's in it. I'm just going to tell you that the age field of it is greater than 18, even though I'm not going to share the exact age. And also, because you don't have to rerun the computation, it can be a massive computation. It could be you know, something that would run for a year on a supercomputer, but you could still check it in a constant amount of time. So they have like these two really awesome properties, and basically it's just like a tool for digital trust between computers. Yeah.
Gotcha. Cool. Thank you for that. Drilling a little bit deeper on that, if you are talking about being able to hide certain things and make certain things visible, that seems that there's a connection there to privacy. Is that kind of part of the purpose there, to protect the user and the system at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of neat because like these tool properties come hand in hand, where you can verify a computation in like constant time, but doing that means, you know, necessarily like there is a property that I can also hide parts of the information that's being fed into this program, and you can trust part of it. So yeah, you can do really awesome privacy things. You can build things like private identity, private voting, revealing subsets of information without revealing the whole piece of information. Private auctions. There's a whole bunch of privacy kind of functionality you get from these as well. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's a great topic of the privacy side. Working in the blockchain and seeing everything be public. How do you interop? And so these are really great topics, for the community to think about. I've often heard that your blockchain is quote the lightest blockchain. At 22 kilobytes. And I was just checking this morning on Bitcoin. The blockchain is 435 gigabytes, which is, not small, I guess, if you want to say it that way. Also, you have some people who would like to maybe put things on top of Bitcoin, like NFTs and some maybe somewhat radical ideas that folks have to make that even larger. So if you could explain a little bit about how you're able to, deliver such a light blockchain, or in your words, the lightest blockchain, I think it's, very interesting and probably something we should cover.
Yeah. I mean, this is what I was saying with like the verification aspect. Like, you can imagine what it means to use Bitcoin is you have to download all the transactions and blocks that's been performed, and you check to make sure that if you run a particular program over all those blocks and all those transactions, that program outputs the results. Yes, everything was valid. It was this particular strength, which is the strongest among the ones you have available to you. You can trust this is like the true Bitcoin blockchain. But given that's just a program, we can instead just represent that with a zero knowledge proof that says there exists a series of inputs since Genesis, which when applied to like the check blockchain valid program and get strength, outputs this results. And in doing so, make it so a very small zero knowledge proof, a few kilobytes, can allow your device to check Mina is fully correct and valid since Genesis. So, which is cool because then you can put it on like a browser, on like a phone, and get like full node verifiability of everything without being kind of hobbled by having to also download every transaction that's ever occurred to get that property.
Gotcha. So enabling that to be lighter seems like it opens up a lot of different options for use cases for, I think, what you're calling zkapps, for example. Like, how do people build on top of a chain when it's so big versus so small? So that's really interesting. Did you want to talk a little bit about how the developers are building their apps on top of this? Just a little bit.
I mean, really, like the verifiability aspect, it's kind of it's like only as useful as there's actually useful things to build on it. It gives you this awesome like trust minimization property, but that makes the chain really decentralized. But still, like, it's important what you can actually do. And there, what we've done is we've like exposed all the core recursive zero knowledge proof technology in Mina, in its like smart contract layer, which is really cool because it means that you get access to all the same programmability that you do from like a normal kind of like the EVM chain people are somewhat used to. But also, you get access to all like these privacy and scalability primitives that zero knowledge proofs gives you. So you can like spin up a ZK rollup that's recursive ZK rollup that is fully verified in like, a couple hundred lines of like TypeScript code that is like, idiomatic and easy to understand, which is like, you couldn't just do that with like non-ZKP native stuff. So it's or you could like, make a private voting app and like also a few hundred lines, and all these things are available to developers that are starting to build on it.
That's cool. Having that's the feature that you're using with recursive, it must be difficult to provide security, verification, and all that. I imagine that's all part of the protocol, but can you just go a little bit into that as far as how do you secure something like that and know that it's verifiable in this way?
I mean, it's just about, it's really about making sure that the cryptographic primitives are implemented correctly. When the perspective comes in from like a developer, you are seeing like a really clean abstraction over, okay, I can produce these proof objects that are kind of like evaluating a function, just get a proof out, and then I can also have a function which verifies those proofs, and under the hood that's doing like a whole stack of cryptography. And I mean, to make sure it's actually secure, we have a bunch of like a team looking at it. It's open source. There's other projects also using the base crypto. There's audits that have occurred on the base crypto. So I mean, it comes down to that. But what's cool is from a developer, you get like the beautiful zero knowledge proof abstraction without having to necessarily think about all that stuff under the hood, like you would with a hash function or public key.
Gotcha. Okay, no, that makes sense. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And how do you enable folks to learn how to work with your ZK ideology and everything? Is there a program that you offer so developers can like get started, like, quick skills, a few opportunities to look at examples and try this out, try that out? Like, how do you provide that environment for folks to learn?
Yeah. So a key thing we were trying to do with this is like we have this really powerful like zero knowledge proof programmability setup. We want to make it as easy as possible for people to learn, so we've exposed it all in TypeScript. So it's pretty straightforward. It's not like a custom language or anything. It's like a DSL built into TypeScript. We have a series of tutorials on it that kind of walk you through everything from like a hello world to like doing some privacy stuff on our website. And it also has a blog that talks about the like abstraction that you might be wanting to think about as you're using zero knowledge proofs, because it's kind of like it's like a new thing that you can do with programming in a way that you couldn't make these proofs and send them over the wire before. And so there's some interesting kind of like conceptual abstractions that we have listed in the docs as well. Yeah.
Cool. I appreciate that. You can build the best thing, but if people don't learn how to use it, that's not going to be as helpful. So good that you thought about that. Perfect. I'd love to take a little bit of a side tour, because I noticed that you were in robotics. AI is a very hot topic, obviously, in everyone's sphere right now. So I'd be curious to know, being formerly in robotics and now kind of in the crypto space, if you had a crystal ball, what would you do with AI to either help the space or grow the space, or basically AI plus web3? What does that mean to you?
Yeah. I mean, there's two avenues, I think. Like, for one, there's just like as AI gets better at producing code and at doing things there's definitely seems like an overlap with what it means to be able to deploy a smart contract versus just write a piece of code. Like, I think there's some interesting questions about what an optimizer would do over that domain that is kind of scary, but also could be really interesting. The other direction I think about it often is the direction of what kind of infrastructure would you need to build good governance systems for AI systems? Like, we think about this a lot because we both need to be working on a really powerful suite of governance tooling for Mina itself, for projects building on Mina, having a large community that needs to like weigh in and make decisions together. There's like a lot of primitives, such as like zk identity, having like private identity for private voting and surveying and giving inputs to things that seem relevant for collective governance of platforms in general, but also kind of lead to AI as kind of like a difficult pathological case almost of like what it means to like need to do platform governance. So there's like an interesting kind of link showing up there, but early days, I would say.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think about a time where an AI could look at smart contracts, right, and give you like a rating. This smart contract is X% dangerous or not, right? It's not a finite thing, but anything would be better than signing a contract that you don't know. And we expect everyone to know these things, right?
Yeah.
If you're signing a contract, it's your responsibility to read the code and know if it's good. But that doesn't make it very approachable for everybody. And that's something I think that needs to be looked at in the future. So maybe that there is that angle for AI to help out in that way as well.
That's a great point. Yeah, also there's like a wallet that like integrated like, hey, the smart contracts are interacting with LookSafe according to this LLM that has been trained on this kind of thing.
Right, exactly. Yeah, LookSafe. Yeah. There you go. The trademark thing.
Yeah.
That's cool. Thanks for that. All right, going back to Mina a little bit more, a little bit deeper. I think you guys are doing some work with Byzantine fault tolerance, a BFT, and trying to make that more democratic in general. can we dive a little bit on that? Just hear your perspective. How, I mean, this is a technology that's been around for a few minutes, so it's not like a new technology, but I'd love to hear your take on how you're improving that, or what you're thinking about when you look at that.
Yeah, I'll share our thought process. Like, so we have this like way that anyone can very easily run a block producer or like a full node. In, you know, a few minutes to bootstrap, small amount of data because of the zero knowledge proof. We wanted to make sure to like choose a consensus algorithm that seemed to be aligned with that opportunity. That wasn't proof of work because we didn't want to do the energy waste. There's a protocol, it's really interesting, called Ouroboros, which for people who are like deep into BFT, like sacrifices asynchrony. So it's like synchronous, there's like fixed slot times, but still retains like both only 51% honesty requirement, plus plus still being like open to an unlimited pool of block producers. So that's what Mina does right now. So 51% honesty, even though it's proof of stake, which is pretty cool. You have some synchrony requirement. I think it's okay. We're actually looking into now, though, kicking off some research towards what it would look like to kind of move towards what we're calling like this committee-based BFT system, where you do typical BFT for instant finality, but instead of having a fixed cohort of like 200 nodes, you instead randomly sample 200 nodes from a wider set of possible nodes every round of BFT. And there's some math that you can do showing that like as long as the cohort that you're sampling is big enough, it still won't hit the thresholds for things to break. That this would be me describing just like an equation, but there's some cool things you can do with having a limited cohort but subsampling committees still that we're looking into, because you get some advantages from switching to like proper BFT.
Gotcha. So this would this be considered an upgrade to your proof system and zero knowledge, or is it just something that you got to do, but it's not really an upgrade?
So it's definitely an upgrade. Upgrade to instant finality, as well as probably higher throughput ability and like potentially improved latency. It's in some ways orthogonal. What we have to do is whenever we design a consensus algorithm or any algorithm for Mina, we have to write that code also inside of Mina's zero knowledge proof language, the snarky.js, so that when consensus is making a step, we can also prove that step inside of zero knowledge proofs. The recursive zero knowledge proofs in Mina, what it does is it says, if you have a proof from Genesis up to block n, and you want to do block n+1, first do a recursive verification of block n, and then do a check to make sure the new consensus steps and the new transactions between n and n+1 are also valid, thereby producing proof for n+1. So the thing we'll have to do is we'll have to take whatever the upgrade looks like on the consensus side, and we're going to have to write a zero knowledge proof that represents that consensus operation. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. And you had mentioned governance, and that maybe perhaps you think a lot about this. What's so key about the governance of your protocol, and anything you want to highlight around how you maintain governance and enforce governance?
Yeah, I mean, I think like in my mind, this is like one of the most important things for crypto to figure out. Like if this stuff ends up being like kind of key computational infrastructure, like who is it aligned with, who is it working for, who is it providing value to, these are really important. And I think that there's still work to be done on figuring out really good ways of having large communities provide input in ways that are effective and are working well. We actually just launched this program, zkIgnite, which is kind of part startup incubator, part community grant program, part developer tooling program, where it's like this large like innovation program where it's super collaborative and people are proposing ideas and giving feedback to other people's ideas and really figuring out both what zkapps should be built initially that'll be most impactful, given this is like such a new technology and there's so many new possibilities, and what developer tooling should also be granted to be built that will help applications build out their things. For an example, that like one application could be, we want to build like a zero knowledge proof powered DEX that uses zkKYC, and so that's like an application. A tooling side thing could be, there's actually a project that just finished, I think, building like a priority queue / heap inside of zero knowledge proof, so that you could use it to build like an order book, for example, which would be cool because usually that's been hard to do. So anyway, that whole thing is being governed in like a this way where there's a large community of people that are giving input, and we have like this thing called citizens assemblies that are subsampled, that are making decisions and stuff. There's a whole thing, but we're doing a lot of research on it basically to try to figure out what works well in a crypto setting.
That's cool. Yeah, I think it is a big part of crypto, and I feel like some folks have maybe focused just on the speed, but not on the topics like governance. So I'm excited that that's important to your team and how you think. All right,
Yeah.
Switching gears a little bit. There's a lot going on in the Web3 environment overall, and I'd really love to hear your take on a subject that's kind of a little bit tired, but still important to talk about, which is FTX, centralized platform risk. How do you see your platform in that space, and the effect of all those things and those headwinds that you're seeing? What do you think about that in general? Any thoughts?
I mean, it's sad for like the crypto space in general, but in a lot of ways, like it's like, I think for a while we've been talking about building like these trustless systems with zero knowledge proofs that can operate as well as like a centralized exchange or whatever. Like I just mentioned order books, for example, like doing that in like a scalable way in crypto is like zero knowledge proofs make that pretty easy to do. So I don't know, I feel like it kind of highlights the need for us to build platforms that are decentralized, platforms that are owned by users, not owned by like, handful or even single person that, turns out you probably can't really trust. I was like, kind of sad because I liked that SBF was doing a bunch of things in like the effective altruism space. And so it was disappointing to say the least. So, I mean, it just like, highlights like, we shouldn't just like trust people blindly. Like we should probably build systems that are trustless, that can like users can control. So, I mean, ideally we're going to like work towards helping build some of those things, or people that are building on zero knowledge proofs well. So, I don't know, it's mixed for me because I think there's things we can do, but it's also like sad that it's happening.
Yeah, I mean, specifically from your perspective, though, what do you think Mina can do to make things better for everyone? If there is something. I mean, it sounds like ZK is like the thing that's great because you can build on top of it securely and kind of work around some of these challenges. But I guess if there's just a silver bullet that you can make from Mina's side, being able to make a change, is there something that stands out?
Here's like specifically for FTX, I think someone should build on Mina. This like probably is going to happen. Like DEX that has the experience of a centralized exchange. I think it could be done given like the ability to do more compute that zero knowledge proofs gives you with ZK rollups. Like you could build, I think, like a proper private exchange with really good order books that has like a nice website and has like good custody options and stuff by proving things about your custody that, could make us get to a point where we don't have to trust these centralized exchanges. I think that would be like really cool. I think this is like kind of a subset of like platform risk in general, but like FTX in particular, I think someone should just like build like the decentralized version that is trustless, and then we don't have to worry about these kinds of attacks on the space anymore.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I hope somebody takes you up on your advice. maybe that'll be your next gig. No, cool. If you see, a company like ours or other big tech companies, what advice would you give to the giants of the world around this space? Is there something that maybe big tech can do to improve the space as well, beyond what you had discussed as your company does?
Yeah, I mean, I think zero knowledge proofs, like, they kind of came into being through crypto, and it makes sense because they're like this kind of trust technology, and crypto is like a big trust component, but they're more general than that. It's like getting access to like hash functions, or like, things that companies are using all the time. Like I think big companies like Google should like both contribute to like open source for zero knowledge proofs, as well as look into ways to deploy them internally. I don't know, like this is I don't know, this is like this little controversial, I don't know what it sounds, but like I do think like kind of like the wave of like, you know, people wanting more control over their applications, their data, the services they use is like coming. So I think like companies probably need to adapt and adopt like more user-centric ways of working. And I think that's also like a space that like Google should probably be thinking about. What it looks like to build things that are partially owned or owned by users as well, instead of from a just big company. So I would mention those.
Okay, fair enough. And then lastly, I would just ask, you have a lot you've been working on. You've been in the space for a long time. What do you see your biggest challenge that you want to overcome in, say, the next 2 years, the next 3 years? Or is there some like high mountain you're trying to reach in that time frame? If you could discuss that and let us know what is that thing
Yeah,
that you're trying to reach to?
things.
Yeah.
I think for one, like I think with zero knowledge proofs in particular, there's like the opportunity to build Web3 applications that are just as good as Web2 applications, and also bring other like value benefits that people I think will like. So I want to see if we can help make that happen, like help build like these real Web3 applications that get more mass adoption and are equal or better than Web2 stuff. I think that's like a super exciting opportunity, but I think there's like kind of a part two of that where I'd like to see us figure out good ways of governing those applications so they can really be aligned with their user base and aligned with people, which I think is like going to be super key in all these new wave of technologies actually like being something that's good. So if we can help with both of those, I'd be very, very happy. So that's my thoughts and goal at the moment.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Any other pieces maybe that you wanted to share? Any events coming up that may be relevant for your community? I know there's a lot going on in ETH Denver, but I'm not sure if you have any planned activities for your community.
Yeah, we'll be at ETH Denver. I'll be speaking there. Other people will be speaking too. It should be fun. We'll be talking a lot about zero knowledge proofs and how to actually kind of dive in and code them, which is awesome. The ZK Ignite program also is like worth checking out if you both want to like kind of see what it's like when an early community just starts innovating together in like a structured platform way. So I think that's cool, as well as like what kind of things people are actually building would be kind of cool people to see. There's going to be a proposal stage soon, so you can actually just like see what kinds of projects people are proposing to build with this technology and what it's like to do that. So I would recommend that as well. I think those are the two main things at the moment. Yeah.
Gotcha. You made me think of one last thing actually.
Yeah.
Your proposals, people are proposing these great things and it's all kind of like coming together. How do you like decide what actually gets done, what doesn't get done? What is their governance for that part? Or is that just part of governance thoughts in general?
No. So yeah, it's a great question. There's kind of two halves to this. There's like a process half and like kind of a quantitative, like qualitative, like how does it actually, so there's both like kind of metrics by which these are being ranked on. So questions like how feasible is this project? What potential does it have to get users? What potential does it have as a business? Do people in the existing community, would they use it? You know, these kinds of things that we're like ranking the projects on. The actual process though is super interesting. There's this like concept of like deliberative juries or citizens assemblies I think people should like look up and read about, where if you have a pool of people that you feel like are eligible to like be involved in something, either because it affects them or because like they've already shown themselves to be contributors. We're doing like the latter one for now, like people that have already kind of shown the system, but there's too many of them to like actually weigh in and deliberate. You can randomly sample a subset of them. So we're going to be sampling around 15 people from like this broad group of people that are relevant to making these decisions. And they will be like going in and like doing like the kind of steps of doing deep reviews of proposals and ranking them against these different categories I mentioned. And so the actual process is running that way, and we're going to iterate on that. But it's those things together is the process for ZK Ignite cohort 1 at least.
Okay, great. Yeah, I find that subject very interesting because if it is a community effort, you have to have some methodology for bringing everyone together, deciding, what democracy looks like. It's just a very interesting topic. Evan, thank you so much for joining us in our community today. Really appreciated your insights, and it's been a pleasure chatting. Wishing you great success as you work through the challenges within the Web3 space over the next couple of years. And just thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me on. It's great getting to talk today. Deal.
Cheers.